Hello, Dreamcatchers, and welcome to the Writers Haven Show. I am your host, Helena, and today I'm here with author Simba Sana to discuss his memoir, Never Stop. It's a powerful and honest work of literature that chronicles his childhood experiences growing up in poverty and violence in Washington, D.C. in the 70s and 80s to his success as a business owner and co-founder of one of the largest Black-owned bookstores in the country. Here to share his incredible life and author's journey is Simba Sana. Join me in welcoming him to the Haven. How are you, Simba?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, my Washingtonian homie. Being a native of Washington,
we're a rare
D.C.
breed nowadays.
Yeah, we really are. Many people that I talk to about, the first thing they ask me is, did you grow up in D.C.? When I tell them I live in the area, and I say, yeah, I'm not an implant, I'm a native. So you're right, we're a rare breed and very special people. And I must say, I really, really enjoyed your life's journey as told through your memoir. And it really took me back to having come from Washington, D.C. and having read some of the things that you had put in there that was, I think, very much D.C. culture to some degree. It was just a wonderful read. So talk to us about what was the genesis for writing the memoir?
Really, for me, I was forced to write the book, or another word is compelled. It was something that had been suggested over a period of years, and I kept avoiding the process because I had a business, always had something else to do. It only happened when all of that was taken from me, so had nothing else to do, and someone came again with the suggestion to write a memoir, and had nothing else in front of me, and I was compelled to write, and I had made a discovery of something that I felt needed to be put in a book.
Okay, so just making sure that I understand the chronology. Before you had the problems with the business, someone had said, hey, you should write a book about your life, because they felt that it was such a compelling story that you should put a life experience to pen and paper and share that. Did I get that?
Yes, you're correct. Actually,
Okay.
it was a number of people. The first person, actually, that I can recall was someone who was well known in D.C. and around the country, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who wrote a book called The ISIS Papers. She was a psychologist, actually psychiatrist, who was based in D.C., and she was legendary for her work dealing with racism and the crest theory of color confrontation. And so I went to see her regarding my mother's mental illness, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit. And when I told her about the situation and just how I came up, my mother raising me, still being mentally ill, she suggested I should maybe think about writing a book. And then every few years somebody would know about my situation and would suggest, you should write. But I would always just blow it off.
So did you write any form of poetry or literature just growing up?
Beforehand?
Yeah, just because sometimes when people are going through certain disruptive things in their life, they say you should journal or just kind of write those experiences, whether it's in a form of poetry or some other form, as a way to, as therapy, so to speak. But was that part of your equation at all?
Well, interestingly enough, I started journaling in college only because Dr. William Lawbaugh, and he's mentioned in the book. I took a college writing course as a freshman in undergrad, and he had all the students journal. And I kept that journal going even after the semester. So I would journal periodically, and even as an adult, once I came out of college, I would journal periodically, whether it was once every few weeks or 3 or 4 times a year. I kept a journal. And so that was the impetus of this idea of writing and potentially writing a book. So actually the idea, it crossed my mind in college, but once I got into the business of living and working and surviving, the idea kind of went away until Dr. Welsing mentioned it again.
Okay, because your background, you know, in terms of what you majored in college, and you have 2 master's degrees.
That's correct.
But none of them is in the area of writing or
Well,
English.
undergrad, I was a double major in business and finance and accounting. And so that was my double major, BNF and accounting. And so writing was something I never really considered again.
Right, which is so incredible given how gifted you are as a writer. Not having, you know, the formal training or background. Not to say that you have to, but I mean, you write so eloquently that one would assume that you have some kind of writing experience, and that's what I'm trying to get out from you as well is, you know, did you write when you were younger? Did you write through any pain or anything like that? You're like, no.
But part of what helps being a good writer is reading, and I read a lot of books.
Okay.
You read good literature,
Yeah.
so words every day would come in my head, and it would be something I'd read from someplace else or somewhere else. And so reading really helped my writing a lot. And again, James Baldwin is my favorite writer. And so reading him and just like, wow, sometimes I would read things that he wrote that actually was clearer than what I was trying to figure out in my own head. So I was just amazed at what he could do with words. And so it actually kind of hurt my writing some because, you know, when I would look at my writing, I'm like, it's not as good as James Baldwin, but then I realized I'm not James Baldwin. So once I was able to, it took a while to get beyond that.
Okay. Well, we're going to get more into your actual process for writing the memoir, but I want to clue our audience in on the fact that you're, you know, again, as I think I said in the intro, you're the co-founder of Caribou Books. You had how many locations?
We had 6 locations.
6 locations, all in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan
That's correct.
area.
We have none actually in D.C. proper, even though the corporation was in D.C.
Okay.
And our original location was going to be in Anacostia.
Okay.
And look, we have 4 locations in Prince George's County, 1 in Virginia, in Arlington, Virginia, and then we have a 6th store. Our last store was in Baltimore County at Security Square Mall.
Okay, and I know, given your training, your formal training as a MBA, accounting, finance major, that of course those are tools that just makes one successful in anything that has related to business, particularly this kind of business. What was it that made you decide that you wanted to open a bookstore? And did you understand the responsibility of it, given that primarily your books showcased African American writers? Just kind of go through that journey with us.
Yeah, the accounting degree helped me most of all, because business and finance is more theoretical, but accounting is very practical. And then when I went to work for Ernst & Young for 2.5 years, the training that I received there was extremely important, like having a to-do list, being organized and detailed. So when I got into the Caribou business, it just, and it was by happenstance. I was helping the person who became my business partner, Brother Yao. He had a vending stand. I helped him. And that's how it really started. And I was actually selling books on the side for different programs. And like my girlfriend at the time, she was a school teacher, and I would order books for her class and make a little side money that way. So when we connected, I brought the books to it, and then it just went from there. And so the idea was just to have one store. But the accounting really helped me become organized. And the rest just came along as I learned, and we went along. We worked really, really hard.
Now, I am mispronouncing it. Tell me how to say it correctly again.
Well, everyone says Caribou. The correct pronunciation is Caribou. But,
Caribou.
you know, everyone says Caribou, and that's fine.
And tell the audience what that means in what language?
Okay, Caribou is Kiswahili, and it means welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
So essentially, you know, when people, like for example, I have an experience where someone from Kenya, where Swahili is spoken, they would be walking through the mall and see Caribou, they would look up. It's their language. They would come and they would be all excited because it's really telling them welcome to come in.
Yeah.
So they would come in and they would start speaking Kiswahili, and assuming that we could speak it. And I studied it, but I'm not fluent.
And I had spent many a days, because living in Bowie and going to the store in Bowie. What year did you open the Bowie
In
store?
Bowie, 2001.
2001. And just being able to go into a bookstore and find a lot of the treasures that were hard to find. I don't even think Amazon was around at that time.
They were around. They were around. They
but
still were, you know, they weren't where they are right now.
okay, they were kind of still in their infancy.
Yeah, they weren't profitable, but investors, this guy Billy Miller, who was this great fund manager, he predicted that Amazon was going to make a lot of money. He was correct.
Okay, but being able to go into the store and to find a lot of the gems that were hard to find was a real treat. And then that's the other question is, was that your intent to create this bookstore that would house these wonderful, wonderful books written by African Americans? And because people went there, I know I did, a lot of times I went there just because it was an African American bookstore. Just sometimes just to hang out. You know, I would buy books, but it was just a great place to go. And as a writer, I just always would even meet some friends there. It was definitely a place you would go. If you're going to Bowie Town Center, you had to stop at Carib. Say it one more time.
Caribou.
Caribou.
You get to say
Am
Caribou.
I saying it right? Yeah. Caribou. But was that your intention?
Yeah, it really, Caribou really came out of my involvement and my former business partner's involvement in a conscious raising group called the African Development Organization. We were members, and it was a Pan-Africanist Black nationalist group that was based in D.C. There were maybe about 20 or 30 members, and I talk about ADO and Never Stop. And from that conscious raising activity, we had a Lorton Prison College program that we were involved in, tutoring down there. We had a continuous food program, alternative study groups. Every weekend we were studying conscious raising literature. Ivan Van Sertimer, Chancellor Williams, Sheikh Anta Diop, you know, all of those guys, and a few ladies, Asada Shakur, Miseducation of the Negro. So Caribou really came out of that vein. So the idea was to sell conscious raising literature. But of course, once we started selling books and you're servicing customers, customers started asking for things that originally we weren't intending on selling, but when you want to give good service. So it was kind of organic. We had an idea in mind. But then when you're servicing customers, they have certain things that they want. And so it was a dance. We getting in what they want. So eventually we went from selling conscious raising literature, we're selling novels, even street life literature, art books, religion. I mean, it was just this expansive selection of literature, and even music even.
Yeah, that I remember that, and you had wonderful book signings and events there. And you know, we talked early on when we were in the green room about the gumbo event that was there, and I got to meet Marita Golden, and Connie Briscoe was there, and it was my first
several
time.
book signings with her,
yeah.
Very nice lady.
Elin Harris. I mean, that was my first time meeting them, and so it just kind of became a place that you would come to find as a place, if you were a reader of great literature. This is where you go to find it, and you could potentially meet some of those people that you admire as a reader.
Yeah, and actually, I did my master's thesis. I got my first master's in African Studies. Now, I was very fortunate at Howard University. I was very fortunate because my advisory team at Howard in African Studies, they allowed me to do my thesis on the ideas of Amilcar Cabral. Well, a lot of people don't know, but he's considered the revolutionary par excellence. He was killed in 1973. He was born in 1924. He was this extraordinary, fascinating leader that if he would have lived, everyone knows about Nelson Mandela, he probably would have been perhaps as well known. He was brilliant. And he was tragically killed in 73, but he led the resistance against the Portuguese colonizers. And he essentially was the George Washington of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, where they allowed me to study his ideas and then connect that to a bookstore as a site of cultural resistance. So we viewed the bookstore as a cultural institution that was like a safe haven for people of African descent to come in, to connect, to read, to get books for their children. We had a nice African studies section since I was in grad school. So we had books that would cover almost every spectrum of Black life.
Simba, you talk a lot about your upbringing, and there are some things that were very personal, which definitely comes out when you're writing a memoir. Talk to us about how some of the challenges that you faced in putting together that very, very compelling and honest book work of literature.
Yeah, I think the major challenge was when I started writing the book. It was that after I had lost Karibu, and essentially everything was falling asunder. I was going through a divorce. There was financial carnage. I'm in a new relationship. And so just trying to struggle and deal with life every day made it difficult for me to find the time to sit down and actually write and concentrate on the writing and juggle all the things that I was dealing with. And so it took me a while. In fact, I went back and got a second master's degree, and in that master's degree involved a lot of writing. Okay. I went to St. John's College.
Which master's degree was that? I know that's
this was a master's in liberal studies. Liberal studies. And so in this program is a very, very unique school, one of the best in the country. It's the old books it's called like this old books program or classic literature. And so it's in Annapolis, Maryland, very small school, very expensive. I had to get loans to go there and the scholarship as well. But you spend 4 semesters studying. One semester you study philosophy and religion. Another semester you do literature. Then you have politics and society. And then I did history. And so those were my 4 semesters, and I got the master's degree. But you had to write and read. It's extremely stringent program, rigorous. And so when I finished that program, now before I went to grad school, I had been writing for maybe about 3 years or so. And I had written only about maybe 50% of the book. And then when I went to grad school, I stopped writing because I had to focus on school. I finished in 15 months. And when I finished, I picked up the book again. The day after my graduation, I wrote every single day for 9 months and finished the other 50%. So St. John's was critical for me because it was like training camp for finishing my book.
Okay. Was that your intent when you went in?
It wasn't my intent. I didn't know where I was really going. I just, like my wife kept saying, look, the things you talk about are different, they're very unique. I think you need to go and find your place. And so St. John's was a very unique school because the class is actually run by the students. So it's a very unique school, very special place.
Okay, okay. And so in your process for actually writing the memoir, how did you approach it? I mean, I know you said the day after you graduated, you picked it back up and you finished. It took you 9 months to finish. But what was your strategy, the first 50% that you had finished?
Well, it was try to write every day. Try to get up every day. Generally in the morning time, my energy is real strong. I get up, I go running, generally 3 or 4 days a week. Then I would come back and I would try to write. And then you have to deal with yourself, which oftentimes is the big struggle because you tend to procrastinate, and you have to deal with yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're writing and you don't like what you're writing. Was it good enough? That was a big concern for me because I spent a lot of time with writers and some very good writers and poets.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that whatever I put out, I wanted it to be of quality. So.
So what about structuring? Did you delve into?
I had an outline,
Yeah.
And I did a book proposal. And so the book proposal was picked up by Agate Publishing. And so I had a structure that I operated from that was based on the proposal I did. So I tried to, it definitely changed, but I tried to stick to that. And that really helped put the structure together.
Okay.
And it was a guiding principle, kind of an underpinning that had made this discovery. So I had to go through my life from birth all the way to almost present day. So that was the basic structure, but there were certain key points I wanted to hit as it pertained to my life.
Your writing and the experiences are very raw. They're gripping, compelling. How challenging was that to write? I mean, there's real people in your life that you are not only writing your experiences, but also your perception of theirs is also flowing into this book. How challenging was that for you?
Yeah, it wasn't really challenging for me in terms of divulging things about myself, but as you pointed out, other people in my life. So that involved me talking to certain people. And interestingly enough, almost every guy in the book is their real name, with the exception of maybe one or two, a few. But most of the guys, and some of these guys have done some really, I guess you would say, horrible things or illegal things. They were okay. It's something they had dealt with, and they had made peace with what they had done. And so it was okay for me to mention them, and they were okay. Now, almost every woman in the book, one of their names changed. And I think it had to do with the fact that even though women have made a lot of progress since, years ago, it's still a double standard with women. So, for example, I can go out, let's say if I wanted to go out and sleep with 10 women, in some circles I would be held in high esteem. I would be the man, so to speak. But if a woman did that, she would pretty much have to move out of town. That's still pretty much true today. Yeah. So women have to be very concerned about their image, how they're perceived, what's said about them. So, I mean, I have to respect that women are very sensitive about what was said about them.
What about your children?
Definitely their names were changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's the process of how you wrote it. You had a proposal that you stuck to for a good part of it, but allowed yourself the flexibility as you were writing to come up with the final look and feel and sound and tone of the book. And unlike other bodies of work, memoirs are a little bit different in that, I mean, it's basically the story of whoever is telling the story. And you talked about the challenge. Well, you said it wasn't challenging for you.
Well, it wasn't challenging because the things I was talking about that were sensitive, I had dealt with them. Like the search for love, the issue with my mom's mental illness, some personal things. I had to struggle with things that at one point when I was, let's say, a teenager or my early 20s, would have been like, I had a deep, dark secret, which, I was, by the time I got to my late or mid-20s, I was okay with it. And then definitely before I wrote the book, I was okay with everyone knowing about that. And so that's something that, I mean, I laugh at it now.
What message did you intend to send out to the reader in reading your memoir?
Actually, the initial message and the primary message was that love itself is not based upon thought. That was the major discovery that I had stumbled upon, unknowingly, that love is not based on thought. And that's why it's difficult for us human beings to find love, because we use thought for everything. But when it comes to love, it's not based on thought. And that's what I stumbled upon.
Now, you said initially, is that still the main?
It's the primary, but then there's this idea of wisdom, and so the title, Never Stop, really means that if you are in search to find out who you really are, you're really looking for wisdom. This idea of becoming self-knowing or self-discovery, and that's through inquiring of yourself as to who you are. So one should never stop. It's a never-ending process until the job is done.
Okay. Now, I'm going to guess that this is a picture of you on the cover.
Yes. Freshman year, college, cross-country team.
Freshman year, college. What would you say to this young man now, having experienced all that you've experienced and learned about life and love? What advice would you give to this young man?
I would tell him to marry based on love. And I would say to him, if he's wondering, what love feels like, you know it when you don't have to ask. That's when you really know. So, but again, I couldn't, I wouldn't want to change anything now because I've learned so many things, and the things that I've acquired, things that have happened. You can't really play around with, go back in time and change things, because then you change something about yourself.
Yeah. And what message would you give to a person that's thinking about writing a memoir?
To begin the task and to be as honest as possible. To be
Not
as
to
honest
be
as possible.
afraid.
And yeah, one of my, I guess my guys or my dictum comes from a quote from Einstein. It says that the right to search for the truth implies also a duty, that one must never fail to reveal everything that one has discovered to be the truth. And so for me, if I'm going to talk about the beauty of what love is, what I discovered love to be, then I felt compelled to disclose the ugliness of what love is not. So that means I had to be vulnerable about. So I put things in the book that, you know, someone could read and judge me for, but that's okay because that's what people connect with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how someone could judge me says more about them than it says about myself.
Absolutely.
About me.
And their own life experiences and their perception of what you've put in front of them.
Because I want to, you know, the idea of writing the book was to help people, to help change lives, or to inspire them to change their own life.
What's next?
What's next? What I'm doing right now, I'm promoting the book. I'm speaking. I have, tomorrow I'll be speaking at, I'm a Penn Faulkner. I'm a participating author with the Penn Faulkner Writers in Schools program. So tomorrow I'll be speaking to 2 different classes at Cardozo Senior High School. I have another speaking engagement at the Library of Congress on, that's going to be that's going to be actually April the 18th. I'm going to D.C. Jail on March 28th. I'm going to be speaking at Howard Community College March 27th. So I was just at the Schomburg in New York last week speaking on a panel on the 54th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. So speaking is really what I love to do. And so the book really serves as a platform for me to travel and talk to people locally, you know, anywhere in the country. I've been out to California, I've been down south, New York, I'm going back to Philadelphia, also in April the 6th at the Uncle Bobby's bookstore and cafe.
Okay. Any more writing in your future?
Just some essays.
Okay.
I'm going to write something about my relationship to Malcolm X and what he did for me. So just maybe some essays. That would be real nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would definitely look forward to seeing a collection of essays from you and having you come back on The Haven. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing your life with us and this uncompromising and boldly honest work of literature. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, I just want to mention I have a website. I would encourage people to go to simbasana.com and all of my, you can log in, you can sign up, and I have emails going out updating the recipients on upcoming events.
Okay, so thank you for joining me in The Haven. Dreamcatchers, thanks for joining us in The Haven. Remember to connect with me socially on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at Author V. Helena. And you can stream us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Sonos, YouTube, SoundCloud, Alexa, and Spreaker, all at Writers Haven Show with V. Helena. I look forward to connecting with you, and until next time, catch fire on purpose. Dreamcatchers, welcome to another exciting season of the Writers Haven Show. I'm V. Helena, your host and executive producer. The Writers Haven Show was created to showcase the passion, process, and projects of writers of literature, television, and film. In our 3rd season, we've expanded our programming to include songwriters. We hope to inspire and motivate you with this season's lineup of artists. Stream our shows on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, Sonos, SoundCloud, Spotify, Alexa, and YouTube. We drop new episodes every week, so subscribe and never miss a show. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr at Author V. Helena, and visit our website at www.writershavenshow.com. See you in The Haven, and until next time, catch fire on purpose.